Hey, it's Logan, and in this video I'm going to show you how I color grade underwater S-Log3 footage. There's a ton of flexibility and color that you can pull out of these files, so hopefully this gives you an idea of what you can do with your own footage. Alright, so I'm over in Premiere right now, and I've selected my clip. These are just some sea lions shot in the Sea of Cortez a few weeks ago by Nirupam over at Bluewater Photo. And I think this clip will be good because we'll touch on a lot of these tabs over here to get a good looking image. So the first thing I'm going to do is pull up my Lumetri scopes over here next to effects control. If your workspace doesn't look like this, you can just go up to window, workspaces, and choose color. And if your waveform doesn't look like this, or you don't see a waveform at all, you can right click anywhere in this area and choose waveform, and then waveform type Luma. So next I want to convert this from a log profile to Rec 709. And you can do this manually, but the fastest way is just to add a conversion LUT. So we're going to do new item, adjustment layer, drag that on top of your footage, and then in the Lumetri panel, basic correction, input LUT, and find your conversion LUT. Now, every camera manufacturer will have their own conversion LUTs for free on their website. Some people sell them, but you can just get them for free from the website. Just search your camera, log LUT, something like that. So this was S-Log3 Gamma 3 Cine, and I want to convert it to Rec 709. So I'm just going to use the first one and hit open. And right off the bat, you can see it adds a ton of color, contrast and saturation, all that good stuff. You can also see over here in the waveform the before and the after. So when you convert to Rec 709, you're really just spreading all that information out. So next we want to go down to the clip. You don't want to do any adjustments on that adjustment layer. That's just for the conversion LUT. So we're going to go down to the clip, and this is where we can start changing some of the color. So right off the bat, you can see this is super warm. It's red. We want to change that. So in the basic corrections panel, we'll mess with the temperature and drag it all the way to the left to cool down that image. I think that looks good. You can already see before, after. There's a massive difference. The water is actually blue now, and the seals are looking a little bit more natural. But you can see in the waveform we've still got plenty of room to make adjustments, especially in the highlights. So it's a little underexposed right now. So let's just add a bit exposure, making sure not to clip anything. So if you go over this 100 right here, that means you're clipping your highlights. And if you hit this, if you bottom out at the 0, you're crushing your blacks. So you want to stay away from those, but you also want the waveform to be spread out across the graph. So right there looks good for exposure. Next, let's just add a bit of contrast to the image. And if you watch the waveform, you can see how contrast is just spreading out all of that information. So this is 0. We'll just add a bit more. We'll add some more contrast as we go, as we make some other adjustments. But that looks good for contrast. Next, I'm going to add a bit more saturation. I like to start with like 120. See what I like. I think that looks good for right now. Okay, so far, gone from that to that. It's a pretty good image. It's looking a little bit more natural, but I think we can work on some of this magenta hue that's coming through onto the seal and from the light coming through the water. So for that, we're going to go down to the color wheels and match panel, and here you can affect specifically the shadows, midtones, and highlights, and the tint or hue of each of those. So here you can see the highlights are looking a little white. I kind of wanted to make it seem like they're basking in this warm sun. So we're going to go over to the highlights, and we're going to pull those towards the yellow-orange hue. before, after. It's really subtle, but it's definitely there. Next, you can see in the shadow of the seal, it's still looking a little magenta. So I'm going to pull that towards the green. Now you could also, up in the basic corrections panel, change the tint here. So instead of doing those, I could have just made a global adjustment and added some green, since that's basically what we did to these, but I like to be a little bit more specific with what I'm doing rather than making global changes. So with all the changes to the color wheels, this is before and this is after. It is looking a little green, and it's all subjective. I like to add a little bit of green to my image, but I think that's looking good. Can also work on the midtones a bit, so if I did want to knock out a little bit of that green, could just add a bit of magenta to the midtones. That might have been too much. Yeah, I think that looks good. Okay, next we're gonna go into the curves, and this is your curves right here. I like to add an S curve to most of my footage because it adds a little bit of a pop, and it brings out some of those colors that I might have been trying to change. So when I did that, I feel like it brought out some of that magenta a bit more. So I think I'm gonna change the global tint to like -3. Yeah, and that kind of knocked out a lot of that magenta. Brought it back, looking good. Go back into curves, and now we'll mess with the hue saturation curves. And this is where you can adjust colors. So let's work on this blue. So in the hue versus hue, grab the eyedropper and select the blue of the water. Now you can see we're only affecting the blue water. And I like my blues to be a little aqua. A bit too much. All very subtle changes. I think that looks good. Up here at hue versus saturation is where you can take that color and change the saturation of the color. So again, we'll drop eyedropper on the blue and bump up the saturation just a little bit. Before, after. Very subtle, but everything added together makes a great image. If you wanted to just adjust the brightness of that color, you could use the hue versus luma. So again, drop it on there. And now you can see we're adjusting the brightness, but I don't want to do that. So after we've made all these adjustments, you can see it's kind of knocked out a lot of those other adjustments that we made earlier. So I'm just going to go back into the color wheels and fix up these highlights. Particularly here, you can see it's really just white, and I want it to be really warm. So we'll just push that a bit more. Before, after, before, after. It's bringing out a little bit of green, but I don't mind. I think that looks fine. We're really starting to get a good image, in my opinion. Like I said, this is all subjective. You can go so deep into all of this stuff. But when it comes to just creating a good image that looks good to your audience and to you and to your friends and family, whoever you're sharing it with, a lot of these adjustments are super easy to make. So as you go through it, always play your clip through so you know how your colors are affecting as your shot changes. So you can see here, as the seal kind of turns, I can see a bit more that magenta tint in him. So I think I'm going to go to the midtones. Just gonna add a little bit of green. before, after, before, after. Yeah, I like that. And he swims off. Cool. I think this image is looking great. You could add maybe a bit more contrast if you wanted to. All right, so after some of those adjustments, I think I'm gonna work a little bit on seeing this seal a little bit better. So I'm just gonna raise the shadows a bit. And anytime you change like the shadows, exposure, any of these really, you want to counteract that with a bit of contrast because it's going to look a little washed out. And then over here on the waveform, you can see in terms of highlights, we're nearing our clipping point. So we don't want to touch that too much, but we've got a decent amount of room in our blacks. So what we can do is drop those blacks a little bit. Adds a little bit more dimension, a little bit more contrast. I think it looks a little bit more polished. So now you can see, with just these basic corrections, we've gone a pretty far away. And in terms of the entire color correction, we've gone very far. Just kind of goes to show how much you can pull out of these files. All right, so hopefully this quick tutorial made editing S-Log3 footage a little less intimidating. You really don't need to be a pro colorist to get a great image out of your files. So if you have any questions, you can comment down below or email us at ikelite@ikelite.com.